Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football live stream. It is me, Joey P. That handsome young man is Pat Fitzmaurice, and it's you. And we're taking your questions right here on Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Drop your questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can today in an hour because it's a lot going on this time of year. We know you've got drafts coming up. We know you've got lots of things cooking. Pat Fitzmaurice, it's great to see you, my friend. We just did a podcast together yesterday, and we've got the amazing, incredible Fantasy Fest happening on Monday. So if you don't get your question answered, join us live on Monday, the 19th. That's this Monday, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, because we are going to be here talking football with some of the best minds that there are in the space. We got Jamie Eisenberg, Jake Seeley, Justin Boone, and a whole lot more. I think Pianowski's joining us. It's unbelievable. So if you want to get prepared for your drafts, the best way to do it is to join us for the Fantasy Fest. Again, that's this coming Monday on the 19th, starting at 3 Eastern. That's noon Pacific if you're trying to do the math in your head. And Pat, this is our annual fest. It's something very exciting. This is a great time of year to maybe do that little cram fest for your drafts in case you weren't doing as much research and maybe mock drafts as you should have been doing.
Yeah, the fest is a great way to prepare, Joe, and we have now reached the second half of August. I can feel that crackle of electricity in the air, and I was just answering a question in our Discord from someone who said, "Hey, I've got my draft tonight," which nothing fires me up like hearing that. Like, people have actually got real drafts this weekend. We're in the soup, Joe. I'm excited.
We're in the soup. So let's strain it out and let's get some questions here. And let's start with Abel, who is the first one in there to get a question. Full PPR, 10-person league. I have the last pick, but we'll draft back to back. So there you go. Should I draft one elite wide receiver, one elite RB, or should I draft two RBs with my first two picks against 10-man league, full point PPR? So what's your approach here on this one, Pat?
Really depends on whether they have to start two wide receivers every week or three.
Mm-hmm.
If they only have to start two, I want kind of a heavy emphasis on running back with those early picks. Like, I want to get at least one. And you only have so many opportunities to take a running back who's going to give you the combination of elite talent and a workhorse role. And Joe, we know that, we might differ a little bit on the value of Jonathan Taylor, but I'd be looking very closely at Jonathan Taylor there. If it is a start three wide receiver league, I think he's perfectly fine going with, like, I don't know, a Garrett Wilson Puka start, a Garrett Wilson. Who else? I mean, maybe you even get
Marvin Harrison's down there.
AJ
a lot of those
Brown
guys
dropping at 10.
Yep. Pat, I think what's so interesting about this is when you're in that 10-person league, right, and you have that 10th pick, the supply and demand works in your favor. I always like to just take best players available there. You can make a case, though, to go early running back because you might be able to snag a Jahmyr, Gibbs, and a Saquon, or as your example, Jonathan Taylor and a Derrick Henry if you want. Take care of your running backs because then the supply and demand of wide receiver is going to be in your benefit in a 10-person league because there's just more wide receivers. Even if you are starting three, that's only 30 deep active. So just from the pure math standpoint, I think you can approach it that way if you want to go heavy RB. But on the flip side, if you're just concerned about the RB injuries, if you do go back to back, let's say Puka and Garrett Wilson to start a league, that also means when it comes back to you, some of those Rashad White guys will probably make it back down there to you, maybe Devon Achane, maybe even the third round. So there's definitely two ways to do it, Abel. It just depends on how comfortable you are and knowing your league mates and how they like to go through and approach that. Let's go to Zork. Pick one for a 14th round pick, Rashee, Rice, or Tank Dell.
Oh, man. I'm leaning Rice now. It looks like if there is some sort of suspension, it's probably not going to happen until 2025. I don't think his case is going to be adjudicated till late in the year at earliest. And we know the situation's kind of messy in Houston with all the wide receivers, having added Stephon Diggs, having Nico Collins there. And now we've got Hollywood Brown banged up. So while I don't know if Rice is going to be quite as integral to that offense as he was last year, I think he's still a little bit, the outlook's a little bit brighter than it is for Dell.
All right. I agree with you, Pat. I am with Rashee Rice too. Great flourish to the end of the season for him. And it doesn't seem like we are going to get that suspension this year. The more this continues to have dragged on. So perhaps more of an issue next year. But Next year's in the future. We're in the present. We're here answering your questions. Make sure you drop them below too, so we can get those answered for you as many as we can. Swish Plays wants to know Derrick Henry or Isiah Pacheco. Oh, patty cakes. I have a bad feeling we might disagree on this one. I don't know, but you know me. Whenever there is a Derrick Henry conversation, you have to put the crown on and discuss the king.
Is that a Burger King crown, Joe?
No, it's not a burger. It's from Party Fair, I believe, or somewhere of that nature. But Burger King was giving out these crowns. I'd be there getting some more, Whoppers or something. But what's your take on this one? I'm still Team Henry. I get the 30-year-old thing, but with the Ravens offense so prone to running the football, Pat, and a guy who was second in the league of rushing last year on a terrible Titans team, I can't go away from Derrick Henry right now over Pacheco at least. What about you?
I like both, but I've got Henry ranked higher. And like the durability, I agree that he is a different species, which is why I'm a little less worried about him now that he's turned 30. I mean, he's led the league in carries in 4 of the last 5 years and goes to a team that we know loves to run the ball. It's just like imprinted on the Ravens DNA. So yeah, I'm Henry, but I do think Pacheco's a top 10 back. Like I think he is a low end running back one. Hard to go wrong there, but I do prefer Henry.
All right, let's go to, let's say, Robert's question here. 16-team league. Oh, and Robert's really in the soup. Robert's got the double fist of the Campbells right here. 16-team league, 1 quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver, and then 3 flex. So interesting. It's going to choose your own adventure. This is fun. Robert plans to be aggressive on quarterback before a run. Do you agree or disagree? The draft strategy on RBs and wide receivers, for example, would you try to fill a flex with all RBs? Pat, this is always difficult when you have these leagues that are, kind of abnormal in that sense. So you got the 3 flex and then the 3 positions that you have to mandatory play plus the quarterback. Let's take the quarterback question first. Are you somebody in a 16-team league that is looking to address quarterback early or later because you like the Daniels and Goff and those guys like that and Kirk Cousins that you feel like you'll be okay?
Generally later, because I do think there are 15 to 16 guys I'm comfortable with having as my starting QB in a 1 QB league. But one caveat on that, if Robert is drafting at either end of the draft, he might have to be more aggressive because those quarterbacks can get wiped out since you're waiting basically 30 picks in between, your last pick and your next pick if you're on an end. So you might have to be a little bit more aggressive about quarterback if you're on one of the ends. But if you're in the middle, I think you can wait and be patient, wait until maybe there are 10, 11 off the board before you start thinking about it.
That's a fair way of looking at it. What about the other situation too, when in terms of filling those other flex spots? Like if it's a PPR league, I'm very much BPA in those situations. I don't know about you. Are you trying to say, well, I'm trying to control more volume with a running back? Or are you just saying, oh, look, if this is the best player, it's the best player. We just did that show yesterday where you were going, basically wide receiver after the hero RB, and you crushed that. So do you think that that's the 16-team strategy you employ, just BPA, or is there something a little different in terms of positions?
I'm kind of with you, Joe, BPA. And I also think wide receivers tend to be a little less volatile than running backs. So I kind of want to mix there, I think, and just, value hunt your draft. And, maybe that, I think your draft will steer you one way or the other and kind of reveal where the value is going to be. Just follow it.
All right. Joey's got a question here. Joseph Gattaca. Thanks for hanging out with us, Joseph. Is Jacob still RB2 worthy? I know you're all fading him, but what do you think? You're Mr. Packer here. What do you think about the new addition to this backfield for the Green Bay Packers? Is he RB2 worthy for you? That seems reasonable.
So I'm not fading him to the extent that our buddy Deebo is fading him. I know Deebo has some concerns about how poor Jacobs' advanced metrics were, like, yardage after contact per carry and all that. Yes, some of those metrics were poor last year, but they were spectacular in 2022. I think that stuff is more descriptive than predictive. So I think Jacobs is a good running back and one of the toughest inside runners in the league. So I'm not fading him based on talent, but I am fading him maybe a little bit based on Matt LaFleur's reluctance to ever go with a workhorse running back. We saw Matt LaFleur when he was the offensive coordinator for the Titans a number of years ago when he had a 24-year-old Derrick Henry at his disposal, and Derrick Henry only had about 50 more carries than Dion Lewis that year. And like we've seen, Joe, I mean, is there any any question that Aaron Jones is miles better than AJ Dillon?
No, No, there's no
Yeah,
question.
and yet we've seen A.J. Dillon consistently get 10, 11 carries a game for the Packers, even with Aaron Jones healthy. So that is my one reservation. But I think he's a mid-range running back too. I think I've got him running back 16, 15.
Yeah, I think it's more the overall ADP where I struggle with Jacobs, because I think that's the range where you're looking at that. Those guys are undervalued, right? The T. Higgins wide receiver groups, the Terry McLaurin's, like the guys that you and I covet a little bit more. I'd rather go that route and then wait and take a Ramondre Stevenson or take a Jahmyr White in the next round instead. I think that's more the pivot point for me. What about the groin issue that Jacobs has been dealing with? Any concerns about that maybe lingering? I mean, already we're in training camp. You don't love groin injuries. You don't love any injuries, but especially even for a running back, that's not exactly where you want to be in training camp.
Not ideal, but the team doesn't seem overly concerned.
All right. You haven't any recent groin injuries, or you're doing okay?
No, that's all Worm. Worm's the softball player, so I know he was.
He had a groin injury playing softball. Problems. Oh my gosh, that's not good. That's like too competitive of a league.
So yeah.
All right, let's go to Jonathan's question here. How early is too early to draft Saquon, and what makes him worse off than JT or Bijan? Let's take the first one. Saquon overall value. Is he a first round talent to you, or is he no? He's definitely a guy in the second round right now.
Top half of the second for me, Joe.
Top half of the second. That is, I think, very reasonable. I would certainly agree with that. Do you put anything into Pat the fact that he is playing in that same division with a bit of a chip on his shoulder? Do you actually think that maybe this is a situation where Saquon's got a little bit more to prove this year?
Not so much. Not as much as I like the overall upgrade for his offensive ecosystem. So on one hand, like he's going to be running behind a much better offensive line than he had with the Giants. My concerns are maybe that as much as Jalen Hurts likes to call his own number, as much as they like the tush push down there, maybe there's a cap on Saquon's touchdown potential here. And we also haven't seen him be exceptional in the passing game for quite a while. Plus Jalen Hurts is not really a guy who dumps off to his running backs at a high rate. So I would expect modest receiving totals, but we could see the best rushing season he's had in a while, at least as far as yardage.
Now, do you have Taylor?
But I'm not taking him over.
I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay we're working with right now. It's substantial too. I'm going to ask you this question too, Pat, because I think when you're trying to evaluate these running backs, let's say if you were in a salary cap league, would you still want to pay the premium for a Bijan or a Jonathan Taylor, or would you be okay maybe pivoting down a little bit to a guy like Barkley, who is going to be cheaper than those guys, but possibly equally productive? That's in the range of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing Saquon actually in the couple of auctions I've done. Saquon and Taylor have gone for very similar prices, and I would rather have Taylor. I've got the Wisconsin bias, Joe. You know that. Yeah, I mean, and I do think Bijan has the combination of just elite talents and the potential for a much heavier role than he had last year with the Falcons.
All right, let's get to more of your questions here. Let's take one from AJ, 12-team PPR, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, and a flex. Can a fantasy team support both Hill and Waddle, AJ Brown and Smith, Chase and Higgins? The unending question, Pat, of should you have 2 great wide receivers that are on the same team? Let's put it to you this way first. Of those 3 situations, which is the best? You like the Dolphins guys? Would you want both the Eagles guys at ADP or both of the Bengals guys at their ADP?
Dolphins guys, but I do not want to put them together. It's just too limiting. It's rare for both top receivers on a team to pop in a single week. It limits your weekly upside too much.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there, Pat. All right, let's go to another question here. Let's get to Brent's question. Brent is in the keeper league, defending champ. There you go. That's how you do it, Kimbro. Thanks to FantasyPros, he says. I have a few options on my keeper. It's a 12-team Superflex and a PPR. Here are the options here for Brent. Actually, I don't think I have the rest of Brent. Oh, Brent, we'll have to get back to you on this one.
Wait. I see it. They were there on the screen for a second.
Wait. Here it is. I found it. Yeah, look at this.
Okay, nice.
See, Brent, FantasyPros never let you down. So the keepers are CeeDee Lamb at 208, Aiyuk at 808, Zay Flowers at 1105. What should I do? I know my answer, Pat. What's yours?
I think it's Aiyuk. at 808
Really?
for me. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
in a super flex, maybe Lamb's value is very much late first round. So I only think you're getting a few spots worth of value on him. I think Aiyuk is probably more like a 5th round pick in super flex. And I know we're talking about spot like I wouldn't have a major beef with it if you wanted to keep CeeDee at 208. But I think there's a smidge more value with Aiyuk at 808.
You know what? I'm taking CeeDee Lamb at 208 because when you go back into this draft this year, Pat, there's Caleb Williams, there's Jaden Daniels, there's some other guys in here in this rookie class that are going to be playing. You're going to have some fresh life at quarterback, even though it's a super flex. I want the best guy, and I think Lamb is still the best guy. I understand the value conversation there, and I understand the possibility where that becomes frustrating. But it's also going to be frustrating the longer Brandon Aiyuk is holding out and this whole situation goes on too. And we don't have clarity on it yet. And if I had to decide today, the Cowboys have to have CeeDee Lamb to play. Like they cannot go into the season without CeeDee Lamb. You have to have this thing done. So for me, I'm going to go take the best player, and it's Lamb. Even though it's more expensive, that's how I want to start it. And maybe I have an early pick and I can grab a Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. I think that would be good. How about you?
Joe, and I thought I saw another question in the chat about CeeDee Lamb and how nervous we might be about that situation. I'm getting less nervous. Apparently the Cowboys made an offer that was within a couple million a year of what Jefferson just got from the Vikings. So yeah, that's a lot of money for us, Joe, but yeah, it sounds like there doesn't need to be a lot more negotiation to get something done. So I don't think this lingers into the regular season.
Now, the reason why our friend Brent, who just asked that question, was winning championships is because he's using FantasyPros, and you should be too. He's probably using the Draft Assistant, which is a fantastic tool here. It's going to sync up to your league, so you can go ahead, sync your leagues for free over at FantasyPros. And whenever you first start playing fantasy football, it's always fun, right? You do your draft, you get all that stuff, but now it's so much harder. Everybody's out there with better tools, better efficiency. Everybody's got their ideas and their information at a much easier path for them at their fingertips. That's why you need Draft Assistant, because it's going to simplify the whole process for you. It's going to make it easy to dominate your drafts, and it connects to your draft. It keeps track of everything. We use it all the time on the shows. You can see how we use it as well. It'll give you the value picks. It'll predict who's going to go after you, tell you the 3 teams behind you still need a tight end. This is when you should take a tight end. It's like having us in the draft with you, except we're not going to drink all of your beer, and we're probably going to not eat all your chips either. That's why Draft Assistant is better. But really, at the end of the day, this is what you need to go ahead and crush all your drafts. So go ahead and get it today. Go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard, or you can go to Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app as well, and make sure you get all of the tools. So when you're on the clock, you make the best decisions you possibly can. All right, let's go to some more questions. This one is from Robbie Thomas, lead singer of what is it? Those are the band. It's 3 a.m. I Must Be Lonely. Go ahead. Come on. Why can't come on. Why we look at us? 2 old guys who can't think of the best. Rob Thomas. This is gonna really
I'm stuck on the song with Santana.
The
That's
Santana
all I can
song.
think of. Yes. God.
Rob Thomas. I've got to Google it. What band was Rob Thomas in? What's happening to us? How did we do this? Anyway, Matchbox 20. Matchbox 20. Jeez.
Yes.
This
Brain
means
fart.
Pat and I need the weekend. This is what happens on a Friday. The brains just stop functioning altogether. PPR 10-team league, the 102. Keep Amon-Ra or Jonathan Taylor. I'm keeping the Sun God. Who are you keeping, Pat?
For me, Joe, it's dependent on how many wide receivers they have to start. If you only have to start 2, I'm actually keeping Taylor over Amon-Ra. But if you have to start 3, I think it's a slam dunk. You keep Amon-Ra.
Give me your heart, make it real, or else forget about it. See, that I couldn't remember. Why couldn't I remember Matchbox 20? What's wrong with me? They were huge for like 2 years, I feel like. Yeah. They still tour, though, which is nice. I mean, you and I still tour, too. Pat and I are going to go out on the road after football season. We're going to be out there. I think we're playing Sheboygan. We're playing some of the other greater Minnesota area. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be very cold in February, but that's when people book Pat and myself. We're like the polka band from Home Alone with John Candy. That's where we are. Let's get to Frank's question. Derrick Henry or Jahmyr Gibbs in a full PPR, Pat?
I still have to go Gibbs here, but I'm anxious to hear what you're going to say, Joe.
Look, man, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm a little annoyed about this injury. It makes me a little skittish, but I keep coming back to the same thing with Gibbs, which is in a full PPR, especially The guy did nothing for 6 weeks, basically, right? For the first 6 weeks of the season. People wanted to drop him. People were trading him everywhere. It was a hot mess. And then he just completely blows up and takes off. Now, I get it. When Montgomery was healthy, there's a little bit of concern there, but he still had 10 rushing touchdowns last year. Let's not pretend like he didn't. I would still lean Gibbs. He is younger. He is in a great offense indoors. There's a lot of good things there. But Derrick Henry in PPR, I still think is very underappreciated because yards are yards and touchdowns are touchdowns at the end of the day. And you get all those touchdowns, you're going to be a happy camper. All right, let's go to another question here. This one is from Mason. JJ or AJB in the first round? I have Amon-Ra as a keeper in the third. Ooh, look at you, Mason.
Wow.
Looking to solidify my wide receiver core. Bijan and Breece will be gone by my first pick. Okay, so JJ or AJB?
I would be more tempted if it was JJ versus ARSB, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'm going to go with JJ here. I do think to some extent that he might be in that class of quarterback proof wide receiver talents. And, like we saw JJ do okay last year with some backups for Minnesota, but like Sam Darnold floated a 93 catch, 1,157 yard season for DJ Moore a few years ago when Darnold was Moore's primary quarterback. Like I don't think Sam Darnold is necessarily going to be terrible this year. So I'm still rolling with Jefferson.
I got to tell you, someone asked me this today, actually. Like I'm here in the 10th spot or whatever. Do I take AJ Brown or do I take JJ? I think they're much closer now than people realize. I think the Sam Darnold effect is going to be a real thing. I know some people are holding out hope for it. I'm not. I've seen enough Sam Darnold in my life. I love Kevin O'Connell. He's a great offensive-minded coach. But I think the safer pick here is actually A.J. Brown with the Eagles. Like, just do better offense, better quarterback. I mean, JJ is a phenomenal talent, and I know he still had some good games with some of the other folks in there, but I struggle with it, Pat. I mean, if I'm somebody where there's a lot of money in this league or a lot of pride or one of those punishments, even worse, where you got to eat waffles for 24 hours or something like that, I think that I would probably lean towards A.J. Brown at this point and just play it safe, especially since I have Amon-Ra already. Like, I get it. I get the JJ thing. What is the Sam Darnold impact for you when it comes to Justin Jefferson? Because I've already seen him last couple of days slip in drafts even more than I thought he would.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Joe, I have not changed my rankings for Jefferson or Addison. In some ways, like it wouldn't surprise me if Darnold being there the whole year was actually like, if not just a lateral move, maybe even an upgrade than having to break in a rookie. Like I know McCarthy is talented, but sometimes it's, very often a bumpy road for rookie quarterbacks. Darnold has at least played for a little while. He's, as I mentioned before, floated DJ Moore earlier when, Baker Mayfield couldn't do that. Baker Mayfield kind of destroyed DJ Moore's fantasy value, but Sam Darnold made DJ Moore a very functional fantasy asset. So I think I'm somewhat optimistic that Darnold can have a decent second act to his career after facing some pretty adverse circumstances in his first couple of years in the league.
Here's the question everybody wants to know, Pat.
Yeah.
Who is this year's Puka Nacua? I feel like this is a tough one because Puka Nacua, you don't get guys off the waiver wire undrafted that end up setting single season rookie receiving records. Like it just doesn't happen this way. So the answer is nobody for me. But who is the guy that you think maybe goes undrafted that ends up becoming a very good fantasy asset this year?
Javon Baker on the Patriots. And,
okay.
I know Derrick Brown really liked him when he looked at the, when he was studying prospects in the run up to the NFL draft. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, Joe, if Baker wound up leading the Patriots in like receptions and receiving yards as a rookie. And, I don't know, Joe, are you excited about what we saw from Drake May? It looked at least decent in that preseason game last night. So
I like Drake May. I think Drake May I think he's got the right attitude for the building. The shadow of Tom Brady, I think, still looms very large there. And I think he's got the right kind of swagger and the right kind of mental, fortitude for this gig. And I do believe it's going to take him a little bit of time. I think you are going to probably see Brissett, at least for a few games. I do. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I guess my big question is, what does that number look like for Baker, in your opinion? Because if it is Brissett, if it is Drake May, it's not exactly a thrilling offense, regardless in terms of pace, in terms of style, and in terms of quarterback play. So, what's the upside in terms of give me a stat line for Baker where you would say, yeah, this is a guy that could come out of nowhere, help you win a fantasy league? Was it be 1,007?
Yeah, it's not going to be 105 catches and 1,400 yards like Puka last year. I would settle for 70 and 1,000 for him. And all these guys in the chat are like, Mike is saying Malik Nabers. We don't cheat, Mike. We can't say Malik Nabers. Someone else is saying Marvin Harrison, Brian Thomas. No, it's someone who's going to go undrafted. Justin Jones at least nominates Xavier Legette as this year's Puka. So I will accept that suggestion from Justin. But all these people
guys who are being drafted like the 20th wide receiver off the board are going to be next Puka. And that's here's the fun thing about that phenomenon of Puka Nacua, which is he is now one of 4 guys since 2020 to have 4 of the top 5 spots of all time in terms of rookie receiving yards. It's Puka, it's Ja'Marr Chase is in that grouping, Justin Jefferson's in that grouping. So 3 of the top 4 all time have come since 2020. And that's something where I keep looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. and I keep going, yeah, why not him? Why can't he be the next guy that has that 14 and 10 kind of season? I think he could potentially do that. I think the need is there too. James has a question here. Thoughts on Caleb and Christian Watson? All right. So the Bears fans broke HBO Max a couple days ago. So what are your thoughts so far, what you've seen out of Caleb Williams?
I'm pretty cautiously optimistic on him. And, maybe optimistic is the wrong word for a Packers fan to say about a Bears quarterback who could be the best one the franchise has ever had. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I like that they have given him a really nice ecosystem, a decent offensive line, and then that wide receiver trio of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. What a fantastic way for a rookie quarterback to start his career. And Caleb offers some rushing value. Like he's good off script. I like him. I've got him ranked like QB 12, now QB 13, I think. So in a 12-team league, and if I was waiting at quarterback, which is kind of my strategy, I'd feel okay about having him as my starter. And then Christian Watson, it is a murky situation with the Packers wide receivers, but this dude is tall. He has sub 4.4 speed. As a rookie, he scored 8 touchdowns over a 4-game stretch, and last year he had 4 touchdowns over a 3-game stretch. I don't think it's inconceivable that if he manages to play 16 games, and that's a big if for a guy who's had some pretty bulky hamstrings, he could give us a 10 or 12 touchdown season. So, when he's been on the field with Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs at the same time, Watson's target share has been the highest. So
he's my lottery ticket, Pat. Yeah, I've had a lot of Christian Watson in my drafts this year, and I'm aggressive on him because of what you're saying. He is an explosive playmaker. He is a guy that is going to have that 60-yard touchdown. There's certain guys in the league that, there's volume hogs and that's great and all that. Then there's guys that, touch the ball 3 times and that's enough to have a week that can win you your matchup. And Christian Watson to me is one of those guys. He could easily have 3 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like that is not a ridiculous line for Christian Watson. It's just a matter of the health now for him. And I do think that if he stays on the field more, he'll get more opportunity. He'll get more volume, but that explosiveness is something I want. And he's going as wide receiver 40. I've got to get as much Christian Watson as I can. I just think that guy's off the chart. And Caleb, for me, Caleb is another one of these guys, Pat, where I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that's the best way to put it. I still want to see how he handles adversity in Chicago because there will be adversity in Chicago. It's just going to happen at some point. It's inevitable. And then I think we can have a better gauge on Caleb and how he's going to be in year 1. Now, if you want to make sure that you're getting control of all of your fantasy leagues, make sure you're joining us for Fantasy Fest. This is your opportunity live here on our channel. Subscribe, ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you can be a part of our Fantasy Fest. It's happening here Monday, August 19th, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. We're going to have Jake Seeley, Lindsey Rhodes, Jamie Eisenberg, Scott Pianowski, Justin Boone, and all of us here helping break down the best of the best and the players to avoid, all of it right here on Fantasy Fest. And if you can't join us live to get your questions answered or just to be there taking notes, it's all going to be on the YouTube channel. Don't worry. but make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube, ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications, and drop your comments below during the Fest too. We're going to take questions there and help you dominate all of your fantasy drafts. Let's get back to the questions here, Pat. Here's one from, from Mirinda. Who do you like better, Joe Burrow or Anthony Richardson? This is a great question, Pat, because this is all the sexiness of the upside of Anthony Richardson and a guy who's much more steady, but is not without risk in Joe Burrow, as I'm wearing my Bengals shirt today. So who would you rather have on your fantasy team?
I'm going for the sexy upside with Anthony
Of course
Richardson. And yeah, I mean, it was a small sample size. Granted, he only started and finished 2 games last year, but he, on a per snap basis, scored, I want to say it was 15% more fantasy points per snap than Josh Allen, who led all quarterbacks in fantasy scoring last year. Like, Richardson piles up points with that rushing ability. And yes, he got hurt last year, but if anyone is built to withstand a heavy rushing load at the quarterback position, it is the 247-pound Anthony Richardson. And man, can that guy move, Joe? And he's not a terrible passer. Like, he's not going to put up Patrick Mahomes caliber passing stats, but like, he was respectful in that regard. 6.9 yards per attempt last year. Completion percentage slightly below 60. He'll get that up. So, man, he has top 5 upside for sure. Burrow's obviously terrific. Doesn't give you that rushing value though, and he's endured some injuries. We have to worry a little bit, I think, about that now, and different ones too. He's had a major knee injury. He had the calf issue last year. He had the wrist issue last year. I'm still drafting him as a top 10 quarterback, but I've got Richardson as a top 5 quarterback.
I think Richardson's the one that you roll the dice on that could break fantasy. Like, he's the league winner guy. Joe Burrow is still going to be a very good fantasy asset, but if you're in a single quarterback league and Anthony Richardson doesn't work out, there'll be Goff, there'll be Stafford, there'll be Cousins, there'll be other guys you can either draft later if you're unsure and you want insurance, or maybe even pick up off the waiver wire, maybe a Caleb Williams off the waiver wire, right? To me, you give it a shot. Now, Superflex, that's an interesting conversation too. I mean, Richardson typically goes before Joe Burrow in every Superflex league I've been into. So I think either way, people are saying, hey, I'm trying to win. The downside of Richardson is inconsistency, but it's not like they're both, without risk. So I want to be where Pat is too. I'm trying to win leagues. Let's go to Dick Togo's question. Bijan or Tyreek at the 1-1. So Mr. Togo has narrowed it down to these two. Who do you want to take?
Yeah, another one of those things where I'm probably most likely it's Tyreek. But I would at least consider taking Bijan if it is a start 2 wide receiver league. I don't know. Tyreek's awesome. The one thing I don't like about taking Tyreek at 101, Joe, is that it kind of takes me out of the Jaylen Waddle, Devon Achane business at the 2-3 turn. And I really like both of those guys at the 2-3 turn.
Just do it, Pat. You take them at the 2-3 when it comes back around. I'm trying to think of what else you could do. You take Tua in the 4th, and then you just take Jaylen Wright in the 5th. You just say, I'm taking the Dolphins. That one bye week, and you're just going to go with the Dolphins off and take Raheem Mostert.
Let Mike McDaniel manage my team too.
I mean, if you think about it, if you had a team that was Tua, Tyreek, Jaylen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, like, that's not that's a team every week that's going to score points. Like, it is. I mean, if they have a bad week, you're kind of out of luck, but it's fun. I think the argument for Bijan is, if you do take Bijan, you just want to get that. If Bijan is the 1 RB that you're in love with and you feel like this is the guy, this is the situation, this is the year I'm doing it. And then when it comes back to you, you could easily do the Jaylen Waddle, Chris Olave, the, Brandon Aiyuk, Nico Collins, like those, you could double tap wide receiver there. So I don't think that's a bad strategy either, Pat. But how do you like the way those rosters look by comparison if you go Tyreek Hill, then BPA 2-3, or the big time running back and then go double tap wide receiver at 2-3?
I mean, when he's picking 101, this is his only opportunity to get a high volume running back with elite talent. He will not have that opportunity at the end of the 2nd round. So if he wants to seize that opportunity, I understand it. Now, if I had to start 3 wide receivers every week, I couldn't do it. I think I would go with the wide out. But if he only has to start 2 wideouts and it becomes easier to fill those 2 slots in a satisfactory way, I'm not opposed to taking Bijan there.
I don't like 2 wide receiver leagues. Is there something wrong with me? I don't know.
No, I'm with you.
I'm more apt to, and I don't know why we haven't evolved to this yet. I think it would change fantasy completely, which is to do the quarterback, 1 running back, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex. That to me is the format we should be looking to the future as more and more of these committee situations crop up, as more and more like the uncertainty. Running back ain't what you used to be, and having to start 2 of them in most leagues is tougher. Here's one from Damon. Gentlemen, and I'm sure he uses that term very loosely with us. I have my pick of draft position, 12-team PPR, 2 wide, 2 RB, a flex, a quarterback, and a tight end. Where would you want to be in this 12-team PPR?
I'm going to get one of the running backs in this situation. Like I want Bijan or Brees. I think
So
I don't
6
know
kind of
because
guarantees you that.
I mean 3 guarantees you that. You could play chicken a little bit and go 4, but
Okay.
I think I just take 103.
Okay, so there you go. Pat's getting it done. Doesn't want to leave any money on the table. That's Pat Fitzmaurice
Right.
there. Let's go to another one here from Schmidt out of luck. Great screen name. As first pick in a 10-team PPR, should I grab a quarterback on the 2-3 turn or go wide receiver? In a 10-team league, Schmidt, I don't know why you'd be going quarterback this early unless the scoring for them is very odd. Pat, thoughts on this?
Same. Agree completely. Go.
All right.
Like maybe running back gives more value than wide receiver, but that's way too early to start thinking QB.
Here's one of our favorites. Recyclops is back with it. It's, one of the great things about doing these is you get back and you see the names in the chats you haven't seen in a while. Everybody takes that little time off, and here's one of our OGs, Recyclops. Brolitical science. Excuse me. Reading was not my strong suit. Gents, assuming Aiyuk remains in San Francisco, how do you feel between drafting Deebo versus Aiyuk? That's a good question, Pat. I don't know where you have them in your rankings currently. How do you feel about these 2 San Fran wide receivers?
Not much of a gap. I think I've got Aiyuk 15th and Deebo 17th. So it's just Aiyuk was just freakishly efficient last year in terms of yards per catch, yards per target, yards per route run. I don't think he repeats that efficiency last year, but he also had only 105 targets. Maybe some injuries give him a little more upside for targets this year. Maybe they figure out a way to get him the ball a little more aggressively because he averaged basically like 6.5 targets a game last year. In Deebo, they work him into the running game a little bit. It's just the thing is, I mean, there's week to week volatility there, Joe. There's always going to be, and that's why I can't get on board with the people who have ranked Aiyuk as like a low end wide receiver 1 or Deebo as a high end wide receiver
Aiyuk.
2.
I like Deebo. I pass both of them for Nico Collins and Jaylen Waddle every time. Like that's my answer. My answer is Jaylen Waddle. That's my answer to this question because here's a fun fact too. This is researched fun fact for you. Here we go. Since 2000, only the Patriots in 2018 lost a Super Bowl and made it back to the Super Bowl the next year. And that was in 2019, and they also won. Now, you can throw that out the window because that's a guy named Tom Brady playing quarterback. So he's the anomaly of all anomalies, right? And it's funny because the 49ers, consensus in the top, 1, 2 to win the Super Bowl. That's a long time. That's 24 years now, Pat, of data that says when you lose a Super Bowl, especially in heartbreaking fashion, things typically don't go well for you the next year for a myriad of reasons. They have a lot more tread on the tires from playing the playoff games. They're playing later into the season. It is harder to, reinflate the balloon. And I tend to worry. And it's so funny because every year we do this, I feel like last year, this time we were right here with the Eagles, right? We were talking about, well, the Eagles have, still got Hurts. They've still got, they lost their offensive coordinator, but at the same time, they still got all this talent. And you saw the wear and tear of all of it mentally and physically and the schedule all take its toll on the Eagles. Not to mention the other 20 plus teams that have lost a Super Bowl in the last 24 years, right? And yet we're all just like fine about 49ers, nothing could possibly go wrong with them. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it historically because the data is saying otherwise. The data says there's a lot to be concerned with a team that loses the Super Bowl getting back there. Now, I'm not, again, fantasy is different. They can't have good years, but there were some problems with, like I said, just the Eagles last year at times, especially down the stretch, disappointed a lot of people. One thing that's never disappointing, our incredible Fantasy Pros community. We want you to be a part of it on our Discord. So join if you haven't already tried Discord. It's a great opportunity to do it because we've got shows there going on live that you can be a part of. Ask your questions. The AMAs are there where you can get in touch with us too. If you're a premium member of our Discord, you get more access to us, which is incredible. But like I said, this year, what's really cool is we're doing a lot of our audio only shows. Instead of just recording them, we're recording them on the Discord to interact with everybody. So you've got myself, the Welsh, and Bogman Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern for Out of Bounds. You got Fitz and Boggs on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, and the Welsh and Erickson every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So be on a show. We'll make you famous. Get your questions answered. And also you can find leagues. You can mock draft. We've got channels for everything, including our betting pros too. So our Discord is off the charts. Join it for free. Check it out for yourself. FantasyPros.com/chat. Again, join our community because we're winners. That's what we do here. We help you win your fantasy league and we have a good time doing it. And that's what it's all about. Sports entertainment, baby. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Let's go to the next question from Malali here. Got offered Jacob and Lamar Jackson for Breece and Herbert. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's fair. It's about even. I mean, like clear upgrade at quarterback, clear downgrade at running back. I think I'm just rolling with Breece and Herbert, to be honest with you. Like, I'd rather have that top running back.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm excited for Breece this year, and if Rodgers can stay healthy, I think the Jets can really challenge for that division. I really do. It's going to be fun to see. All right, here's one from Daniel. Bajigalupo. See that? I can say Bajigalupo. What's wrong with me? But I couldn't say Brolitical before. Hey guys, this afternoon, question for you: Achane or Dell as a 10th round keeper? Which one do you prefer? I know
Man, I'm an Achane devotee, Joe. I mean, he's a top 10 running back for me. Like, I think the dude could be special. I know he's not going to get a massive workload, but like he had the same workload that Jahmyr Gibbs had last year. Like their workloads per game, as far as like carries and catches, very similar. And some people are questioning whether Achane should be taken on the 2-3 turn, and no one is questioning that Gibbs should be going at the 1-2 turn. And I don't know if it's a slam dunk that Gibbs is the better player. Like, I love Achane, and I would much rather keep him than Dell.
Well, Gibbs is the bigger profile player. You know, when you play at Alabama, sure, you get your name out there. People know who you are. Yeah,
drafted earlier. I mean,
drafted earlier.
Yeah, so I get it, but Achane's pretty special too.
Every August, I seem to fall in love with a player. Last year, funny enough, it was Achane, and then he got hurt, and I was like, well, I can't draft him now because he's hurt going into the year. He's going to get buried on that depth chart, right? I was wrong. Happy to be wrong about that, but he did miss some time. Jaylen Wright's that guy that I've been falling in love with recently, where the more I watch him, I am taking him in a lot of drafts because, you know, you mentioned Achane, you know, maybe some durability question marks. I don't want to say issues. Let's just say question marks. Raheem Mostert's 32. What do you think about Jaylen Wright as one of these guys you should be throwing darts on later? Because as the season goes on, this is a guy that could see more and more potential workload in this backfield because of the guys who are there in front of him.
I don't think he beats out either Achane or older player. Achane's a smaller player. Entirely possible that injury gives him an opportunity at some point.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible, and I'm looking for it, and I'm drafting him because it's going to happen. And rather than have him on my roster, sitting there at the bottom, than have to spend a lot of fab on him because God forbid the worst case scenario happens and one of those guys gets actually hurt for the year. That guy's going to be a useful player in fantasy. Here's one from Sammy. Let's go to Sammy's question. AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson in a PPR? So with AJ Brown, you get a bigger body of work and, let's be honest, a better fantasy quarterback at this stage in their careers, or Garrett Wilson in the PPR. For me, it's AJ. Where do you go with this one, Fitzy? I think Fitz is a little behind here on the questions here, so we'll try to get his stuff fixed here.
I've got AJ.
Sorry, Fitzy. There's a bit of a delay. This happens sometimes every now and then. Maybe we'll catch up for a second here. But I believe you were saying you've got AJ Brown, right?
One spot ahead of Garrett Wilson, but I consider really close. Like that is a very close call for me.
All right, we'll try to get a couple other questions in here. We'll squeeze them in, and then we'll try to bounce for the day. We've got Marcus Johnson, Higgins, or Tank Dell. It's going to be Higgins for me still. I know Tank Dell is a fun player, explosive player, and all that, but now with Diggs there, I think things get a little more complicated for target share. Higgins, still the 1A in this offense, still a pass-heavy attack, so I'm going with Higgins. Your thoughts, Higgins or Dell, Pat?
I've got Higgins ranked 2 spots higher. That might displease Derrick Brown, who's lurking in the chat right now. But yeah, Deebo's a huge Tank Dell guy, but I like Higgins a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I could tell you what, anything that makes Derrick Brown unhappy, I'm all for. So we should definitely do that. Let's go with here's Ant's question. Can you talk about drafting rookie wide receivers with bad quarterbacks? For example, Malik going 4th round, but has a very bad QB. Is the hype real? And this is a great question because I think the offensive ecosystems do matter. Some talents are quarterback proof. We've seen that with DeAndre Hopkins. We were just talking about that yesterday in the podcast. Others aren't. Drake London was not so far has not been a quarterback proof talent. We're hoping this year is the breakout season from him. But it does, again, give people pause. Malik Nabers, I don't think anybody has a question about the talent. It's how good Daniel Jones can make him. I look at the projections, they're somewhere around 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. And I think that's about right, Pat. And I know some people think he's going to obliterate that. I still have questions about it. Where are you at with these rookie wide receivers, especially maybe some guys lower on the troughs too, like the Keon Colemans and the Lad McConkeys and the Xavier Worthy group?
All right, so I'm not going to try to sell Daniel Jones as the next Dan Marino, or maybe that's a bad example since Dan Marino was not the most mobile guy. Maybe the next John Elway, but like Daniel Jones can throw a spiral. And 2 years ago, the Giants were actually 16th in offensive touchdowns. That was Brian Dable's first year. He and Daniel Jones, he got a really good season out of Daniel Jones that year. And I think the Giants scored as many touchdowns in 2022 as the Chiefs scored last year. So this could be an okay offense. And Daniel Jones, in fairness, has never played with a really good wide receiver. He's never had one. And now he's got a terrific one. So I'm optimistic in just the fact that Malik Nabers figures to have what should be a massive target share in this offense. I'm investing, and I'm eagerly investing. I'm very overweight on Malik Nabers in drafts this year. So I am, just blithely setting aside any concerns about Daniel Jones, forging ahead and drafting Malik Nabers. I think it's going to work. I really do.
Well, I'm thinking about the rookies that we were just talking about, right? That came in, had 1,400 yard receiving seasons, right? That's just massive seasons. Ja'Marr Chase had Joe Burrow. Justin Jefferson had Kirk Cousins. Puka Nacua had Matthew Stafford. Malik Nabers doesn't have any of those guys. I'm sorry. Daniel Jones isn't even in the same universe as those guys right now. So I think that's why his value is where it is. Here's a fun question. Let's say that Malik Nabers was a Ram this year. Right. Let's take Puka Nacua out of the equation. Let's pretend that never happened. He's playing with Matthew Stafford. Where would Malik Nabers be on the draft board right now?
Pretty much right with Harrison, early second round.
Right. Yeah. And that's why he's a value. And I think that's why it's a really interesting conversation to have, because there's still value on Malik Nabers and the talent there. There's still upside because, as Pat pointed out, Daniel Jones isn't the guy that's ever had the opportunity to play with an alpha wide receiver, really. And now maybe this brings out the best in him. And likewise, but he hasn't necessarily made a lot of the guys around him better either. And that's something you're looking for with certain quarterbacks at certain stages of their career. So a lot to unpack there for sure. Let's see if we can squeeze in a few more here. Let's go to Paul's question here. PPR keeper, Jordan Love, Dalton Kincaid, or Jahmyr White in round 9. Who do you have the love for? Is it Jordan, Kincaid, or is it Jahmyr?
I'm just never keeping the quarterback in a 1 QB league. I just never want to keep a quarterback. They're too readily available. I'm going Kincaid over Jahmyr White, I think. Kincaid is pretty squarely in the top 5 at tight end. I don't love keeping a tight end either, but Jahmyr is kind of in, to me, like a low end running back 2 territory. I think you get a little more bang for the buck with Kincaid.
Nico, Waddle, or Laporta in round 3. This is from Alejandro.
I would draft Jaylen Waddle ahead of Nico or Laporta. I worry about target competition for Nico with the arrival of Stephon Diggs. So I've got Waddle ranked higher than Nico, and Laporta, round 3 is a little too early.
Here you go. This is a great one from Matt Ellis. PPR, pick one to keep 8th round, Achane or Kyron Williams.
Oh,
go,
you got I have Kyron ranked one spot ahead of Devon Achane. And, like I still think I don't think Blake Corum is going to totally I don't think he's going to beat out Kyron Williams. I do worry he might cut into the role a little bit, but I still think Kyron's a little bit safer than Achane.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Here we go. This is a fun one from Piggy. How do you feel about having punishments for last place in a fantasy league, Pat?
Oh, Pigbird. I've never done it. My son has to do that, I think. Like my son's league last year, they had the loser had to go into a dog crate and get pelted with all sorts of messy stuff and then get hosed up. Yeah, I'm not too into it. Some of them are pretty cool. The Waffle House challenge and
good natured. I think it's fine, but some of them are getting a tattoo. Come on, that's ridiculous. For
losing your money, losing money is punishment enough for me, Joe.
Right? That's in fantasy football. That's what I would say. Just having to hang out with me for an hour would be punishment. You have to do a live stream with me for an hour. There you go. Here you go. Here's a fun one from KTA. Who is your favorite rookie running back to target in the late rounds? This is an important one. You've got a lot of choices because this wasn't exactly the big, sexy rookie running back class this year. A lot of these guys are going towards the end of draft. So who are the ones that stand out to you?
Yeah, if Blake Corum counts, I'll go with Blake Corum.
Sure.
Maybe some drafts he might be more towards the middle rounds, but there is potential upside there. And Kyron Williams, although they list his weight now, I believe 202, I'm very skeptical that he is above 200 pounds. And I don't know. We saw Kyron Williams miss time last year, and we have seen what happens when one back gets all the work in the Rams offense. Anything happen to Kyron, Blake Corum is a guy we would be ranking in the top 10 at running back weekly. So Blake Corum for the massive upside.
Here's one from Daisha Littlefield. Is there any Broncos wide receivers or running backs worth a starting spot? This is a good one because this is a big unknown here, Pat. The Broncos, I don't know which is a bigger fade for me. I think the Cleveland Browns, because their cost is more than the Broncos. I have very little shares of Cleveland Browns players on any teams this year. I just have no idea what that offense is going to look like, what Deshaun Watson is going to be, if it's going to be him, if it's going to be Winston, what it might be. The Broncos are kind of in that same range. I find myself getting Cortland Sutton sometimes late. I know Jaleel McLaughlin is a target for you. Bo Nick's a big question mark here. What do you think potentially of the Broncos in fantasy this season?
Yeah, so I think maybe Sutton and Javonte Williams are flex worthy right now. Okay. And I've found myself drawn more towards Javonte lately. Because now he's more than a full year removed from his knee surgery. It didn't look very explosive last year, but he looked so good when he was sharing work with Melvin Gordon his rookie year. And we know it's going to be a pass catching bonanza for the running backs in Denver. It always is in the Sean Payton offense. They've led the league with 153 running back targets last year. The Saints were always way up there in running back targets. Someone's going to catch a lot of balls. Javonte caught 47 last year. I think he could maybe catch 60 plus this year.
Here's a good question here from Braden. What top rounders are you absolutely out on? What injuries were you most in camp? Let's take the first one first. Who are the guys in the first round that you're like, nah, this is not a first round pick for me? It's a pretty solid first round, though. I mean, all things being said. Puka is the only one that makes me a little shaky. I don't know why. It just does. Maybe it shouldn't, but that's the only guy where I'm just not comfortable. Everybody else, I think, is first round worthy this year.
Yeah, Puka makes me nervous too, because if Cooper Kupp plays a full season, I don't know that we can guarantee that Puka leads that team in targets. I mean, Puka's good. No question about the talent. What we saw last year is real. I'm also not taking Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round because of what we were talking about with workload. I can't take a guy who was basically averaging 14 touches a game whenever he was playing with David Montgomery. That's just not a first round workload for me. And what injuries are we worried about? Well, we just talked about Puka. That's one that kind of has me a little bit nervous.
And Jahmyr Gibbs has some people a little nervous too.
Yeah, the hand, soft tissue stuff. Sometimes it's a non-issue, and sometimes it becomes recurring. So Josh Jacobs, a little bit nervous on, although the Packers don't seem nervous. But Gibbs and Puka are right at the top of the list. So we can answer the same two questions with the same two guys, Joe. How convenient.
What about the holdout guys? I mean, sometimes you get these guys when they hold out where they come back. I know it happens more with the running backs, but the soft tissue injuries are a real thing with those guys where they are not on the practice field. They're not doing their normal routines. And the next thing you know, it's week one and they pull a hammy or an issue happens. Lamb, Aiyuk, there's a couple of these guys that kind of in that mix right now. Like the sooner the better, but the longer it lingers, I can understand being concerned about the potential for injury being higher early in the season for those guys. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you are out of camp. It does seem like those guys tend to, not a coincidence. Sometimes they get injured, and yeah, I mean, it does make them a little less attractive.
Yeah. All right. One more question here from Aaron. When is too soon to go tight end like Laporta or Kelsey? So, tight end is a really interesting category this year because you've got value at the top, a very high end. These guys, McBride, Andrews. You've got a nice cushy middle with Kincaid and Pitts and George Kittle, even Evan Ingram. It's pretty deep. Brock Bowers, if you want to take a late shot, if you're excited about the kid. So, how do you approach tight end in 2024, Pat?
I'm personally, now that it's deeper, I'm less inclined to go for one in the early rounds. Now that there are actually some decent options at like tight end 9, tight end 10, tight end 11, guys like I'm comfortable with guys like Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, even rookie Brock Bowers. So I would say anything in the top 30 picks overall in a 1 QB league is too early. Personally, I'm not doing it in the top 36 and not even thinking about tight end until probably a little bit into the 4th round. And even then, I'm not as hell bent on getting an elite tight end as some other people are.
Well, hopefully we tried to get as many of your questions answered today as we possibly could. And if for some reason we missed them, again, you can go to our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. But you can also join us Monday right here on the YouTube channel for our 5th annual Fantasy Fest. Get excited, everybody. 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific. The best minds in fantasy football helping you win championships. Jamie Eisenberg from CBS, Jake Seatley from The Athletic, Lindsey Rhodes is joining us, Scott Pianowski is joining us, Justin Boone from The Score, and of course, our lovable cast of characters, Derrickson, Fitz, myself, Terrell Furman's going to be here, Ryan Wormley, the Welsh, everybody. So you should be here too. Join us live for all of the fantasy football chat you can possibly handle, all the questions, all of the insights to help you win your leagues. And if you miss it, don't worry. It's going to be on the YouTube channel on replay. We're going to have playlists too, so you can sit there at the gym or at work and whatever you're doing. You're walking the dog, like Pat's out there walking the dog twice a day, listening to podcasts. Fantasy Fest is going to be there for you to get you prepared for your drafts. And of course, don't forget, sync your leagues for free. Use Draft Wizard. Use the draft assistant with Sync. Help us help you. Let us be in the draft with you so you can go ahead and crush all of your drafts. Pat, it was a great time to hang out with you, answering the questions, getting back to everybody here on the live streams. We haven't really done a lot of these in a while, and we're right back in the thick of it, and we're going to be here doing these all season long, more of these, if you can even believe it, because we just can't get enough fantasy football, and you can't either. That's why you're here. So again, drop your comments below, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell till it goes ding, and join us Monday for Fantasy Fest. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Enjoy your weekend.